took quite a few months planning before we finally made this trek to Bhaba. Delhi was the place where we got together. The lanes and bylanes of the old Delhi are always attractive for photographers. We passed the day there before taking the overnight bus for Shimla. Reaching Shimla, we were very excited to start our day trip. The early morning Shimla was so serene and so beautiful. We took our breakfast from the bus terminus and got ready for almost 6 to 7 hours journey. A jeep was waiting for us to carry us to our first destination, Kafnu at Kinnaur. Soon we took the mountain road beside the frightening Sutlej. The charm of taking road trips with like-minded people in the mountain is always so refreshing. We took a bath on the wayside stream. It was so refreshing indeed. And after that, the lunch was always very delicious. And then the journey resumed in the famous Shimla-Kalpa highway. But very soon we got the idea why this road is always regarded as one of the scariest roads of India. We met with a terrible landslide and got stuck there for hours before the rubble was finally cleared. We got late, but Souvik took a quick nap on top of a vehicle. When we reached Kafnu, it was very late in the evening, but it happens in the mountains. The day dawns beautifully beside a tiny lake. We were all fresh after a very good night's sleep in the camp. The trek started on this day. Here you see the partially frozen Brangar River. The river accompanied us for the next 2 days of our trek.
बताओ आप क्या करते हो यहाँ पे? जोर से बोलो।
इस पे काम करता है लकड़ी का।
Mounting up the hill, we met the last family for the next 5 days. But what is this? A skull of a horse. The first day lunch was taken by the side of a rip-roaring Vangar river. Crossing natural river bridges, ascending through alpine forests,
कहाँ तक जाओगे? रंगपुर जा रहे हैं? रंगपुर जाओगे? कल? कुछ छतरी वतरी नहीं है?
and finally, walking through long meadows of flowers, we reached a valley at the day's end. We set camps at Maling campsite, and the dinner is always very tasty. When we reached Maling last night, it was nearly dark with total cloud covering. But when the first sun rays came the next day, it was looking marvelous. We had a quick chat and the plans for the next day. This day we are trekking up to Kara. Catching drinking water from the little streams is always a fun in Himalayan treks. Crossing rivers one by one was extremely fun. The weather changes invariably in the afternoon. We reached Bhaba river and then the picturesque Bhaba valley of tiny yellow flowers fluttering gentle breeze. All campsites up this trek route were beautiful. Kara campsite was beside the Kara lake and surrounded with high mountains.
कौन सी पेड़ की है? बंद करो।
Talking to these mountain people was experience too.
आप भी क्या खाते हो यहाँ पे? मतलब नीचे से लेके आते हो? तो यहाँ पे थोड़ा जा सकते हैं घर पे? आप जहाँ पे रहते हो?
They were collecting herbs to prepare medicines. They braved this harsh weather every year and camped for a few months in this valley. Nature was so beautiful here. Crossing a number of rivers, we reached a picturesque valley of flowers. This day's trek was pretty difficult. We gained much heights in a very smaller time and we are very tired at the day's end. Fushtirang was our last campsite in Kinnaur. Tomorrow, we would leave this green valley for a completely different landscape when we cross the pass. It was to be the longest trek on that day. We pushed off quite early, but to our horror, we lost the way in the dense fog. Soon we reached a zone which was filled with boulders without any proper track. Ascending on boulders is always a very difficult task. Very often we were losing our way. We had to go through long stretches of ice also. It was hard ice, dark black ice, and it was extremely slippery. It was pretty dangerous to stand somewhere and take the photograph of the place. But the landscape was so alluring. It was so beautiful. The very landscape just helped us to walk in smaller steps and to cross the pass. The final stretch was extremely tough. We were ascending and the steps were very slow. There was excitement of approaching the pass, but every single step was tiresome. At that time we met a group of military personnel. When we were huffing and puffing, they just leapt from one boulder to other and crossed us with a smile. The first thing that struck us on reaching Bhaba Pass was the wind. It was extremely windy. In all mountain passes, the high mountain passes, one comes across very hard wind. The wind blows very hard there. But Bhaba Pass has got a speciality, has got a very distinctive characteristic. To our left, the place where we had passed for the last 4 days, there were green hills and rain clouds were hovering over those green hills. But to our right, it was clear blue sky. Under the sky, a vast expanse of brown Spiti valley was in front of our eyes. And the most important and comforting sight was the descent. From there on, we will just go on down and down. And the landscape changes so drastically, so dramatically. Soon, Pin River will accompany us and we will move on through that brown, leafless, infertile valley of Pin. The 4 days of Bhaba Pass gets drastically juxtaposed with absolutely different view of Pin Valley. This part of the trek was long, though it was decent, but we were absolutely exhausted when we reached Halder, our last campsite. Sunrise was as usually breathtaking. The last day dawned bright and clear. We were reaching towards the end of our trek. last day's lunch was memorable when we relaxed our limbs beside the Pin River and we were recollecting all what we have done in the last 5 days. Again started counting days for having lunch beside some other mountain stream and some other day when we will come back to the Himalayas.